It is just over 70 days until the Tokyo Olympics, and the build-up continues to be dominated by two questions. Will they go ahead, and should they go ahead? Bear in mind, the head of the International Olympic Committee was supposed to be going to Japan next week. Here he is, Thomas Bach. But now he's called that trip off. He'd been due to review the preparations and take part in the torch relay. The trip's off because the Japanese government decided to extend a state of emergency. And here's the reason why. Japan has recorded more than 6,000 cases of COVID-19 for 3 days in a row, and only 2% of the Japanese population has been vaccinated. As you might imagine, Japan's Prime Minister is under pressure, and when questioned by the opposition in Parliament, he was forced to deny that the Olympics are being prioritised over the nation's health.
In the Prime Minister's head, after all, you are Olympics first. And regarding COVID-19 measures, it can't be helped to think that they may have become secondary.
I think that is very rude, but I have never put the Olympics first. In holding the event, we will take proper measures against the infections of athletes and tournament officials so that they can participate with peace of mind.
There's also some evidence the Japanese public is opposed to the Games going ahead. One poll on Monday showed a majority of people want it either cancelled, that's about 37% of people, or delayed, that's 28%. And bear in mind, it's already been delayed a year. About a third still want the Games to go ahead as planned. Well, the organisers are pushing ahead. There was a test event on Sunday at Tokyo's Olympic Stadium. Hundreds of athletes took part. They held 11 of these trial runs across different sports in the past few weeks, all under very strict COVID-19 protocols. None of the athletes or officials involved have tested positive so far. Well, in the athletics, the US sprinter Justin Gatlin won the 100 metres test event. He says the real thing in July will be a great Olympics with all the necessary safety measures in place.
I felt beyond safe. I've been tested every day, either saliva or nasal swab, every morning. The bubble has been very successful. The only time I've ever seen the outside is when we get on the bus to go to the track. We work out, then we go back to the hotel. We don't even eat in a cafeteria.
Well, not every athlete is quite so sure. The tennis star Naomi Osaka represents Japan. Here's what she said when asked whether it was appropriate for the Games to go ahead.
For me, I'm an athlete. And of course, my immediate thought is that I'd want to play the Olympics. But as a human, I would say we're in a pandemic. And if people aren't healthy and if they're not feeling safe, then it's definitely a really big cause for concern.
And each athlete will have their own personal considerations. Serena Williams has 4 Olympic gold medals already. She also has a 3-year-old daughter called Olympia. But the Tokyo organisers aren't allowing athletes to bring family members with them. This was Serena Williams' reply when asked what that would mean and whether she would be able to go.
I haven't really thought much about that. That's a really good question. I haven't spent 24 hours without her. So that kind of answers the question itself.
I want to speak to Michael Payne, a former marketing director of the International Olympic Association, now a sports consultant who's advised broadcasters and sponsors for these Tokyo Games. Thanks for joining us. Do you think they should happen?
I do think they should happen. I think the IOC and the Japanese government have gone to tremendous lengths to ensure that there can be safe and secure games. The controls in place, as your athletes in the interviews just before you talked about, on the rigid controls on testing, the rigid controls on the bubble. I think they've got a playbook in place that you can have a safe and secure games.
But how can you have a safe and secure playbook when you've got 30,000 athletes and coaches and support staff all coming in from the countries of the world?
Because you're operating in a complete bubble environment. I've read the playbooks in detail, and they're tough. I mean, it's not going to be an Olympic Games as you would normally envisage. There is no opportunity to engage with the local population. The athletes, the officials will all be running either from the athletes' village to their venue and back, or from the official hotel and back. So there's a very tight corridor to tightly control the interaction between the international guests and the local population.
What about
I think even
Michael, sorry to interrupt you, but what about the potential devaluing of the Olympic medals, given that it's clear some athletes won't travel, and presumably if an athlete tests positive the day before a big event, they'll have to drop out?
Well, you've got a simple choice. For the vast majority of athletes, they would like the games to take place. This is their one single opportunity. So the choice is, does that happen or do you cancel them? And nobody wants the games to take place in an environment where there is a risk to health. That's why they got safe and secure protocols in place. But equally, is it better to just say it's too difficult and stop? Or do you try and protect and ensure that the games for the athletes, never mind the finances, for the athletes, that they can still take place?
I was reading with interest that the decision in the end will come down to the IOC and not the Japanese government. Our viewers might be surprised that it's the IOC who has the authority over what happens in Tokyo.
Well, it's a partnership between the IOC and the host country. The host country that is staging the games, they cannot unilaterally cancel. Ultimately, the IOC, as the master for the last 120 years, that is responsible for delivering the games, it is finally their decision. But no decision is getting taken here unilaterally. It is a partnership between the IOC and the host country and government.
But doesn't it make you uncomfortable when I read out polls such as the one I quoted, where the majority of people would either like to see a cancellation or a delay, and you're arguing for something to go ahead for the benefit of the athletes and the people organising it?
It clearly is a unique and difficult situation. But interestingly, one of the most successful Olympic Games ever, the 1964 Tokyo Olympics, the public in the lead up to those games were opposed because they didn't feel it was right. They didn't feel they were ready after the Second World War. And yet those games went on to be incredibly successful. So it's a very fluid situation. And I think at the moment, everybody's trying to build confidence for the Japanese public that they're not going to be exposed and that these will be a safe and secure games.